Now, in barely 24 hours, the United States would go to the polls to elect their 45th president. Electorate would choose between Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton. And of course, I'm joined in the studio now by Daniel Fennell. He's the Public Relations Officer at the U.S. Embassy here in Ghana, and Dr. Makita Smith. She is a Fulbright scholar at the University of Ghana and head of the Department of Communications at John Brown University in the U.S. state of Arkansas. Hello to you all.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Great. So less than 24 hours to the polls. How are you feeling about the polls? Let me start with Mr. Fennell.
Good morning. Good morning. Mache.
Okay, that's good. That's your tree there. Yeah, so how are you feeling about the elections tomorrow?
So it's been an interesting electoral cycle, but that happens every 4 years, and we're looking forward to it happening on schedule. We'll see the results come in probably about 4 a.m. here in Ghanaian time from the west coast of the United States, and they'll be declaring most likely the conclusion of this long and winding road.
Dr. Makita, how are you preparing for the polls tomorrow?
I'm actually having a class over to watch, so we will be up all night, and I'm teaching a public opinion course, and so students will be there watching with me in real time. So
does it mean you're not voting?
Oh, I've already voted.
Oh, okay, and have you, Mr. Fennell?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Definitely.
I'm tempted to ask who was your choice.
Are you tempted?
Yes, and I just asked.
Oh, I thought you were just saying you had the temptation. Well, I can't talk about my own. I'm a U.S. government official, and so what will happen is the winner will become my boss, and we'll provide the same service and the same advice that we would for either of the successful candidates.
Great. Now let's talk about the polls. You're aware that there've been a number of polls coming out ahead of the general elections tomorrow. And as of Friday, I'll just quote the BBC's poll. It suggested that both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were neck on neck, and that both candidates had 45% chances of winning the elections. Now today, earlier in the morning, after 6 a.m., the CNN was saying that, according to the CNN poll of polls, it said that Hillary was leading by 3 points. And before 8 a.m., the poll had changed. It actually suggested about 46% for Hillary Clinton and 43% for Donald Trump. I want to find out from you, what is your understanding of the polls ahead of tomorrow's election?
Well, I'll defer to my very learned academic colleague who's an expert on polls, but I will say this about our process in the United States, is that polls are merely a sampling of what people think at that moment. They're a snapshot at that time, at that second. But really an election is decided by the number of votes that are cast. And so when the citizens who are registered go to the polls, and that's the most important poll, is when they indicate who they'd like to be president. And remember also, in the United States, we don't have a single election run by the federal government, which is the case in many other places, including in Ghana. We have 50 states, and each of the states administers its own independent election, separate from each other, using its own format, its own machines, its own ballots. And each of them then, the conglomerate of the United States, all of the states put together, determines the winner.
And for you, your own understanding of the polls?
I think they're a good indicator of how the public is feeling right now, and so that's what they are, is public opinion. But in terms of predictability, there are always variables that are in play that may determine that. So 3 percentage points is not a huge lead, but I'm curious to which voters who have not been polled, whose voices are we not hearing? And so I think you have to wait and see, but at this point it's a close race.
You would admit that this particular election of the U.S. has been characterized by a lot of drama regarding the candidates that are in. Some supporters say that, I remember one of them on the BBC was saying that this election is like a choice between a cook and a crazy person, excuse me. That's what the quote said. And you also understand that the FBI was doing this investigation about Hillary Clinton's email scandals and all of that. Yes. Everybody thought that it had gone to rest. Until 11 days to the elections, James Comey came out to say that they were reopening investigations. And analysts have said that this announcement by the FBI affected the polls, and they gave evidence of this to an extent that in swing states like Florida and North Carolina, where they expected that Hillary Clinton should have been leading, Donald Trump was leading ahead of Hillary Clinton. What do you make of the decision by James Comey to open investigations crucial less than 2 weeks to a major election? Mr. Fennell? Seems I'm starting with you all the time. This time, let me start with Dr. Makita.
Sure.
Okay, I find it to be curious, as a person who can say openly that I'm with her. I thought it was, I'm not a conspiracist, so I don't think it was intentional, but I do find it to be curious. And at some point, I'm sure there will be more questions than answers in terms of the determination to release the information when they did, but also to release the information that nothing was found when they did as well. So I find it to be curious. But more importantly, I think Trump and Hillary are pretty neck and neck in Florida right now. So just a little bit of a caveat that he's not exactly leading in Florida or North Carolina the last I looked. But the races are very tight. And so it's hard to see, in terms of public opinion, it being the predictability of the outcome of the election at this point, because it's ebb and flow. This moment, people stand here. I do think the whole release of the FBI report hurt the Hillary camp tremendously, but I don't think it's time to say that it impacted her in a way that she can't recover.
Mr. Fennell, do you agree with the opinion from others that Mr. Comey's action was politically motivated and it affected the polls of the elections, especially against Hillary Clinton?
So I think the doctor said it correctly, is that it did affect it in some regard, but not a lot. The difference from 1 or 2 percentage points nationwide seems to be very small. The question is whether or not it'll make any effect with people who actually vote.
Small, sorry to butt in, small in what, which of the polls are you suggesting? Because if I'm right, Ipsos suggested that Hillary, before the investigations were reopened, she had about 95% chances. It dropped to 90, and after 2 p.m., it dropped to 70-something.
But the number of people who still prefer the candidates, it's a matter of 1 or 2 percentage points that it flips on. Yesterday, Sunday, the press was reporting that the FBI had concluded that there was no interest in further investigation, that they haven't changed their idea towards any prosecution. So in fact, the timing of this is more important than the content in some ways. The question really is whether or not, who will vote, who will show up. The polls are very, very interesting because they're public opinion, but the elections are really determined by votes, not by public opinion. It's by who actually shows up. And so tomorrow will be a significant day to really determine the final poll.
And just let me just say that ethnic minorities and certain income populations of people are not always privy to the phone call or the polls. And so there's a population of people who are somewhat in the shadows and who may not be reflected in the polling data. And so for those people, you will not see them until they go to the polls. And so you can't discount them.
And I want to build on the point of Mr. Fennell before you came in. You know, after the announcement by Mr. Comey, there were a number of condemnations. In fact, as we speak now, there's a report online, and I'll just quote it to you. It says, a complaint has been filed against the FBI Director James Comey with Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility that accuses him of interfering in a presidential election. Do you think that these oppositions, and this is just one of them, could have influenced the outcome of the reopening of the investigations? Because a lot of people were against it. Some of them were saying that they could tell that there was actually nothing in there. He was still going to come out to say we didn't find anything wrong, but just to disrupt the polls in a way. Do you think that because of these oppositions, it kind of affected whatever results that came out after the opening of the investigations?
Again, my phrasing was, I'm curious, right? So I'm a journalist by training, and before the doctor, this is what I did, what you do. And I led a team of reporters who covered elections and politics. This is what I do. And so until I can see what the motivation was, which nobody has seen yet, I can't say. You know, there will be people in the U.S. on both sides who will claim foul play and who will say that it's, threatening to democracy. But for me, I have no facts. So I have not spoken to him. I cannot say for sure that he was motivated by this or motivated by that. I am very curious. I would like to know, why the timing of the whole thing. But sitting here from Ghana, I cannot tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that it was motivated. That it was a political ploy. But my friends at home, they might say so. Might say so. But for me personally, I have more questions than I have answers.
Do you think the exoneration of Hillary Clinton after the reopening of the investigations has come too late?
I guess we'll find out soon. Part of the process that we should be aware of is that in the state-by-state votes, if you win a particular state, for the most part, you get all the electoral votes from the state. So if Hillary Clinton wins by a micro percent on Florida, she gets all of the electoral votes that come out of Florida, and that goes the same for Donald Trump. So even if there's a small distraction, if they're neck and neck, as you say, it could determine the outcome of a particular state. But there are 50 states. So the change of the outcome of the entire election is not in the hands of only a few. It's in the hands of millions and millions of voters across many different states. And so it looks as though those particular states would all have to line up in particular ways, and I'm not sure that this would have that effect.
And based on what Dr. Makita was saying, opinion could be divided as to what prompted Mr. James Comey to do what he did. Others, let me just stay a little longer on this. Others are saying that he breached the Hatch Act. I think 1960-something, which prohibits public officials, apart from the president and the vice, from politically involving themselves in some of these things, and therefore they think that he's already soiled his records and must be given the sack. Do you agree?
Again, for me, without any information, I can't say he should be sacked or not sacked. But I do want to understand where it's coming from. My bigger concern for the whole timing of everything is that the early vote has traditionally swung Democratic. And so people who vote before tomorrow usually vote Democratic. And so those people, if they voted early and this cloak of indiscretion was hanging over the Hillary campaign, it could have some impact. As for the director, we will deal with him. Once we find out what there is to deal with. So
it's true that the director has a 10-year tenure. But what do you think of this opinion from others?
So President Obama, I think, has been clear. He spoke a few days ago, and the White House has said that they don't see any evidence that there was any malfeasance or an interest, but they think that the timing of the announcement may have been ill-conceived and poor judgment displayed. And I'll take the president's opinion and happy to relay that. But the question on the election is really yet to be determined. If it has no bearing on the outcome, the incident will be less emotional probably in a few days.
I'll come to you again, Mr. Fennell and Dr. Makita. Meanwhile, we know that the fear of racial discrimination and mass deportation is galvanizing many Ghanaians living in the U.S. with the right to vote to turn out in their numbers to vote in tomorrow's crucial American elections. Head of our political desk, Evans Mensah, who is covering the elections with support from the U.S. Embassy and the International Center for Journalists, traveled to our city in the United States to meet up with some members of the Ghanaian community. Listen to his conversation with two of the community members.
I'm very much concerned. I haven't, given up my identity as a Ghanaian yet, but I'm very concerned because whatever happens to America indirectly happens to a lot of countries, including Ghana. So for me, I'm much concerned, and particularly because of the fact that I live here, So I'm following this election very carefully. Having said that, I think that it's unfortunate with the process that is happening right now. We have, of course, in this day and age where we have a lot of, hackers around, we have a lot of cameras around that literally whatever you do, you think you're doing it in the darkness, but it's out there. And we have people outcry, people, saying that we want this particular person, and we have voter suppression, all these things happening, it would have been a different story if all these things didn't come in the limelight. But with these things coming in the limelight, for me, and with America priding itself as a super, power, I think it's, it's going against them. It's all these things are working against America.
Now, let me ask though. So we all know their challenges. I think that you admit that this year's election has brought the worst out of America. I think that is a way to put it. The way you. So who are you going to vote for?
I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to vote for. I'm not going to tell you, but let me just put it this way. Let me use my demographic, the demographic in which I fit, to help you draw your own conclusions. I am a black man in the U.S. I'm well educated. I have lived in blue states all my life, if you will. I think that's enough.
Blue states, by the way, are states that traditionally always vote Democratic. In other words, they've always voted Obama. They are expected to vote Hillary. And he's always lived in those states. He's a black man. Black people in America associate with the Democratic Party. So our conclusion is...
well, obviously he's going Hillary.
Who knows?
That's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Say it, I said it.
Yeah. And he agreed. You agree, right?
I'm just, the demographics in which I fit.
So we are drawing our own conclusions then.
Please feel free. That is what I wanted you to do, right?
So you heard some Ghanaians there interacting with the head of our political desk, Evans Mensah, there regarding the U.S. elections tomorrow. I'm joined via Skype by Evans Mensah to have some more on this. Hello, Evans.
Hello, Beatrice.
Great. So sorry to have cut your sleep short. Less than 24 hours to the polls in the U.S. First, what would you say has been the reaction of Ghanaians to this particular election?
Well, it's been a mixed reaction. The reactions that I've managed to get from Ghanaians in the U.S. is not different from what I've spoken to Americans about. And note that a lot of the Ghanaians I've spoken to themselves are Americans themselves. They've lived here so long, they've acquired the right to vote, they are citizens. And so they'll be, of course, be voting, except that the issues that will influence your vote this year are slightly different. So for the two gentlemen I spoke to, for example, and of course, because this is broadcasting, you can't speak to a whole lot of them. In informal conversations, you get opportunity to get the true sense. And this was reflected in the conversation. What they say to us, what they say to me is essentially two things. They're looking at the elections and the outcome and how both candidates have campaigned. And two main fears emerge. One is what will happen post-election if Trump wins. And for most of them, the key question of immigration comes up very strongly. Well, most of them still have families back home that they would like to give opportunities to visit the U.S. one day, to also see what they can make of this great country. And they believe that under Trump presidency, that might be curtailed. But also, there's a bigger concern about increase in racial discrimination under Trump presidency. And if you play that clip a bit longer, you would have heard one of them, Kwejo, say that in clear terms that Trump has campaigned on racial lines. And for them, that is a bigger fear that they hold. And I must say, it is these two things, immigration and what might happen under Trump, the discrimination, the racial, sentiments emerging a bit more, have galvanized them. And he's telling me that a lot more of them want to show up on Tuesday and cast their ballots. Those who have not done that already, because early voting has been going on for a while and more than 40 million people, according to CNN, have already cast their ballots. But this is what is galvanizing people, the Ghanaian community here and the African immigrant population generally, based on my conversations with them, to show up there, to turn up on their numbers on election day and cast their ballots. And it appears all of them seem to be tilting towards Hillary Clinton and the Democrats now.
And Evans, talking about the fears of the Ghanaians there, do you think that their vote tomorrow will make any significant impact on the elections?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have the statistics, but this is a big, huge country, the United States. And the United States is a country formed by immigrants. Barack Obama is the best example of this. There are millions of African immigrants living in the USA who still have families back home, who will be voting. Their vote will matter. Their vote will count. And the thing that strikes me is the immigrant population here, they are aware that they can make a difference. In fact, on Saturday, I was privileged enough to, by chance, meet hundreds of young, enthusiastic supporters of Hillary Clinton who have been galvanized and jolted to get up there and knock on doors and get people to go and vote. Some of them were Black Americans. Some of them were African immigrants who have lived here, who now have votes, who are going out there knocking on doors. I spoke to some of them, and they said, listen, we've watched what has unfolded since the FBI, of course, dropped that bombshell. The October surprise is called here, indicating that they're going to reopen investigations into emails related to former Secretary of State. And because of that, and we've seen what the polls have begun to show, that Trump was closing the gap. I am in Iowa. Iowa voted Obama in 2008. Iowa voted Obama in 2012. Iowa, according to the polls now, is leaning back towards the Republicans. Traditionally, historically, do understand, Iowa has always been Republican, but Obama, being the phenomenon that he was, managed to win it twice. Yet now, Trump is ahead here in the polls. And Michigan, another interesting scenario, Minnesota also, Trump is putting a lot of efforts in there. And this, all people tied mainly, largely, to what has happened since last 2 weeks with the FBI thing coming in and Trump closing the gap. And this is what is galvanizing all these enthusiasm on the part of Hillary supporters to step out there a bit more, to wake up from some sort of complacency that had engulfed them because they were winning earlier in the votes. And this is affecting the Black community also, the African immigrant population. And a lot of them want to turn up now tomorrow and cast their ballots. I've been interacting with them, and that's a key thing that emerged. And they believe they can make a difference. And tomorrow they're telling me that they're going to galvanize all their family members, those who have acquired voting age, those who have the privilege to vote, and turn out tomorrow and vote so their voices can be heard.
Great. Evans, hold on. I'll come back to you, but let me ask a question from one of the things you said. Let me ask Dr. Makisa a question on that. Do you think that these concerns from the immigrant groups and, let's say, the Ghanaians there are valid?
Oh, definitely. Actually, there's about 190,000 Ghanaians, according to the 2013 census, who live in the United States. And 190,000 people can definitely be a force in making a difference in terms of states across the U.S. And so I think that they have some very valid concerns, and I'm not surprised that they're being galvanized to go out and vote tomorrow. I'm very excited to hear that. From Ghana, but it's a substantial population, and they can indeed have an impact. And that's just Ghanaians alone. We're not talking about Nigerian Americans or people from all over West Africa and all over the continent, but just Ghanaians alone almost number 200,000, and that's a significant number of votes.
I'll come back for us to wrap our conversation, but let me go back to Evans Mensah. Evans, you've raised all these concerns, the immigration issues and others. Do you know whether these concerns have gone to the campaign team of Donald Trump and how they are reacting to it?
Oh, I mean, I was at the Republican Party headquarters a couple of days back, and listen, they are bored. I asked that question directly of one of Trump's campaigners. And he says, listen, this country has been run over by immigrants for so long, and that it's time, and these are his words, it's time to take the country back. I mean, that's the view that they hold. That's what they express. And yes, they've heard about the accusation that they tend to be a bit racist. They tend to be a bit, nationalist in what they say. They simply do not care about that. They believe, and this gentleman Rex, who in fact has managed to reconfigure.
All right, we're here. Thank you very much, Evans Mensah there. He's the head of our political desk. He's currently in the U.S. covering the elections. And of course, the elections would be in less than 24 hours in the U.S. So let me come back to my guest here in the studio. So you've had a number of these concerns. For you, I want to talk about the policies of Donald Trump and then Hillary Clinton. And of course, these immigrants who are concerned, they are probably because of what they've heard the candidates say. For you, immigration issues, what do you think would happen if Donald is elected or Hillary is elected?
So let me say this. First, I want to pay a compliment to your correspondent. Who's been able to put his finger on very significant themes and be able to get the direct sources. You're very well served. Your own research into the Hatch Act, as many Americans are not even aware of that kind of detail. So well done, first of all. I'll say this, that the policies that have been articulated by both of these candidates regarding foreign affairs, so relationships with other countries, what they expect to do in trade, are very nuanced. And although the rhetoric seems very significant, we don't expect a significant change in American policy towards Africa or the development of interest in both democracy and the economic development, trade. Those things we anticipate would continue along the same lines that we've seen even under the Barack Obama administration. The relationship, though, between the candidates and their rhetoric on immigration is a bright line, and I think that Mr. Mensah is correct that that's been a significant campaign ploy by that campaign. But the question is, what policies would that engender? And if you look deeply into the websites that candidate has indicated, these seem to be thematic rather than political. They seem to be ideas rather than plans. And I anticipate that if Donald Trump was elected, then the debate would then start on what if any, change might take place.
But you were saying that there may not be significant changes, but you're aware that Donald Trump talked about his opinion regarding Muslims and going to build a wall around Mexico and all of that, and it gives a basis for these immigrants to be afraid or to think that if he is elected, they are doomed.
Yes. I mean, if this is what he's saying, you can only take him at his word, right? And so the beauty of the American system is that there are checks and balances. So will he be able to be effective and get his agenda pushed through? Who knows? But this is what he's promising his supporters, is that is his platform. So we have to hear him on that. Whether or not he would actually be successful is another story.
So for you think that there are systems in place to ensure that, it's not everything that you can push through?
I've seen some of the best of them not. Look how long it took to get the Affordable Health Care Act implemented. And so, and that actually started under a Bush administration, all right? So it's been deemed Obamacare, but it really started under a Republican administration. And so it went through several administrations before it became a reality. And so I believe that this could not happen overnight. My bigger concerns are with employment, all right? So predictors are predicting a recession in the U.S. next year. And in terms of aid to Africa and foreign policy, I'm not sure how that recession will impact what's happening there. And so I'm hoping for a candidate who's serious about job creation and who is going to be able to manage through that recession and honor the commitments that we've made up until this point. And so that's the bigger issue for me. Whether or not he can build a wall, you have to have funding and support to do that, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to gain that support.
Let me get your final words, Mr. Fennell, and on this particular angle, the campaigns. What has been your own opinion of what happened during the campaign with, Donald Trump calling Hillary Clinton nasty woman, interrupting her when she was talking, Hillary also talking about the fact that Donald didn't have the right temperament to be a president of the United States of America. What's your own impression of how the campaign panned out?
Well, what I take from that is that a lot of the perspective on how the candidates behave come from watching them talk to one another, either through intermediaries or during public debates. That's an important element of our process, and that's something that we take on board seriously, because many people form their opinions based on their observation of the individuals. But I also look, the process is much bigger than any particular word. Any particular sentences that were uttered in a 1-hour debate are going to be underpinned by actual actions and legislative initiatives. And let's see how the process plays out.
Were you taken aback when you heard some of these things?
Well, it happened so late at night. I don't know if I was able to even stay up that late always. But there's a lot of histrionics in the American system. We're a country with significant media, as is Ghana, and when people have a chance to see and gain opinions of the candidates take advantage, and they want to grab the attention with as much gusto as they can muster, I think.
In 30 seconds, Dr. Makita.
Theatrics. This has been one of the most dramatic elections that I've seen in a long time, and it's good for TV. And so everybody's watching, the world is watching. I've been looking at some Russian reports of how they've characterized Secretary Clinton as a witch and other things, and so it's been fun. It's been fun TV. I haven't been particularly impressed with the behavior on either side, but in terms of TV ratings and getting the word out and letting people know where you stand, they have done what they have set out to do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel Fenno.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for inviting us.
Makita Smith, thank you very much. So my two guests, Mr. Daniel Fenno is the head of public affairs at the U.S. Embassy here in Ghana, and Dr. Makita Smith is with John Brown University in Arkansas in the United States of America. You're still here on Joy News on Multi TV.